In a market that includes powerhouses from Germany, such as BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz, sometimes you gotta root for the underdog. Sometimes you gotta hope for a Cinderella story. And 5 years ago, we got that with the Genesis GV70, a crossover that has a unique style, a unique design, a crossover that was somewhat upscale for its price point. Also a crossover that had two great powertrains, giving you an exhilarating and fun driving experience. Now for 2026, we have something a bit new here, a new interior, slightly different exterior, and also today, we're checking out the base model because I'm curious to see what this vehicle offers you guys under $50,000. In today's video, we're going to check out what the GV70 is all about here. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why. If you're looking at buying a luxury crossover right now, you want some good technology, you want a comfortable interior, maybe even a sporty exterior design, then maybe taking a look at the GV70 might be a great decision. Now before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Genesis of Danvers in Danvers, Massachusetts for letting come down here to check out the GV70. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Genesis inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the 2026 Genesis GV70 2.5 we have today, you're looking at a starting cost of just under $50,000. This is the base model for 2026, but don't let any of that fool you. It is very well equipped. It's also, in my opinion, a bargain in this very competitive class. Now, as you take a look at the exterior, there are some new things here to this model. And a lot of it is going to be for the interior, but you might notice some differences for the exterior as well, mostly with the headlight design. There's some more bezels here than there was before, and this gives you a different look than the G70 that this vehicle shares platforms with. You also have a new grille design. Now, unless you're a Genesis enthusiast, you're probably not going to notice a lot of these changes here, but it is worth mentioning. No gloss black trim, which is actually kind of refreshing here in this class because a lot of manufacturers like using gloss black. It's more of this chrome bronze look, really nice. You're also going to have functional side air curtains for better efficiency and better airflow on the highway, and Genesis loves using their mesh grille design. For the lower portion of the front bumper, some chrome accents, obviously would be expected for a base trim here for 2026, and you also have a lower grille as well for better airflow to that engine. What I love though about the GV70, and I've always loved since it first came out, is its car-like appearance. That yes, it is luxurious and upscale, but it takes a lot of the styling elements from that G70, which especially up front looks pretty cool. Now as you make your way over to the side profile, by going with the base model, these wheels are not going to be as eye-catching, but I think they do the job. They are 19s, and obviously with a larger tire size might create a bit more road noise. We'll find out during the test drive, although for 2026 Genesis did try improving the suspension and ride quality and also the handling for this model, so we'll find out later on. Best of all, no cladding here. So nice. A lot of manufacturers do use cladding, but at least for Genesis we got more of that luxury look here to this vehicle. You are going to have body color match side mirror caps to go along with turn signal indicators, and then obviously blind spot detection for added safety. Then as you make your way around to the back, nothing really different here. You got the split taillights, which I really love. We love unique styling in this class. Really draws your attention, gives you, I think, more of a premium luxury look to this crossover. You also have a sloping roofline, so somewhat Porsche Macan-like, Audi SQ5-like. I really like to see that. The Genesis badge being written out on the liftgate, very classy and trendy. Then for the lower portion of the rear bumper, you're going to have that cladding here. This is the only part of the vehicle that has cladding. We saw this with the G70, which I don't like. I wish we would just have a full paint finish to this vehicle, although we do have some terrain modes that we'll talk about when we check out the interior, so it is somewhat off-road worthy. And then to cap off the exterior of the GV70 is this mesh design once again, which, like I said before, Genesis loves using for some reason, and it's just above your backup lights. Now you're not going to have visible exhaust outlets, not really surprised by that, but I would love to see it since this model seems to be more sports tuned than other vehicles in this class. And then one more thing I want to point out here before we check out what's powering our model today. When it comes to ground clearance, you're looking at 7.3 inches. That is not class leading. In fact, that is at the lower end in this market. So car-like in appearance, car-like in design with the suspension, but it should be more than enough to take on snow-covered roadways. Powering our Genesis GV70 today is going to be a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, producing 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. It is paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. Now you can go with a 3.5-liter turbocharged V6, but in reality, I think this might be all you really need. Now, when you take a look at the numbers, this is better than the Mercedes-Benz GLC, BMW X3, Volvo XC60, and Alfa Romeo Stelvio. So you're looking at a crossover that, at least on paper, should be more performance-oriented, fun to drive, and also meet your expectations more importantly. Now, pairing up with this engine today is going to be all-wheel drive for better urine capability and versatility. But what about that fuel economy? By going with the 2.5, you are going to have 20 miles per gallon in the city and 28 miles per gallon on the highway, which ironically is the exact same out of the G70 sedan. This is not the most efficient in its class, but would fall right in line with most vehicles that use a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Hopping inside the Genesis GV70 for 2026, the base model by the way, there's a mixture of emotions because on one hand, I am really impressed with the technology. Yes, there is some software sharing between them, Kia, and Hyundai, and you can kind of see that, but the resolution and graphics would say otherwise. And that means a lot to me, especially with this being the premium luxury brand out of the South Korean family of vehicles and manufacturers. So this is actually really cool stuff here. Also, these seats, they're plush, they're supportive, and the bolstering is pretty good. Also, I like the upholstery. So some good fit and finish aspects to this crossover. And then on the other hand, I look at the fact that we don't have a power moonroof and we don't have ventilated seats. But I think we can live without those features today. So starting off with these seats, they're power adjustable, heated, and have leatherette upholstery for both the driver and passenger. The driver's side does not have 2-position memory for added convenience. Not too much of a surprise there. What is surprising me though is that for a base model, and especially in a luxury market, Genesis I think went above and beyond the Call of Duty here because the bolstering is very similar to what you would find out of a Porsche Macan, out of an Audi SQ5, out of a BMW X3, maybe even an M Sport model. And that means so much to me, that Genesis, yes, is a luxury brand, but is also trying to draw you in with their performance. And you really get that sense of what this vehicle can offer you on the roadways when you hop inside for the first time. In front of you will be a leather-wrapped steering wheel, which feels really nice in the hands. Aggressive 10 and 2 and very firm 9 and 3 grips, very beefy. You're also going to have paddle shifters as well to rotate the gears yourself. And better yet, they're not plastic, so that means a lot. In front of you will be that full digital gauge cluster, which is conjoined with your infotainment system. And by using the toggles on the left side of the steering wheel, you can scroll through a variety of information and customize this layout to your liking. Better yet, you are going to have that navigation map in front of you, which you're not going to find out of Hyundai and Kia products, at least on the lower end. So you are going to have information displayed here, such as your fuel economy statistics, but you can also somewhat customize this screen, which is really impressive and gives you some sense of intuitiveness. And that, again, is surprising me here with the Genesis GV70. This is a huge upgrade over what I experienced a few years ago when I first checked out this model. Now, as you take a look at the infotainment system, once again, you can see some software sharing between Hyundai and Kia and making its way into Genesis, but it's not the same, though. So you are going to have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. But you've probably seen this widget layout before, but the difference here is that each widget has its own thumbnail, which I think is pretty cool. What I like, though, is that sure you have onboard navigation, you have all this here, but the 3D setup. And then the GV70 pulls onto the screen, and now you can adjust your exterior lighting. You can check out inside, door and liftgate, 360 view. This is so cool. And to see this under $50,000, again, is really something you wouldn't expect out of a non-German brand, out of more of a niche product. And you can customize everything. The cluster, vehicle settings, climate, seats. You have that 360 view again. You can look back outside. I mean, this is really cool stuff. Then as we swipe over to the right again, you have your voice memo, radio, media, HD radio data, climate. So from here, you can adjust your climate control settings, but there's some dual functionality because you're still going to have the same icons on the dashboard itself. Then when you swipe over one more time, another set of widgets here for connected services, valet mode, etc. But I am just finding myself somewhat speechless because this is not something I was expecting here out of Genesis. And I've kind of been overlooking the Genesis product line over the past few years, so maybe I'm just taken by surprise. But if you're someone looking for technology and you like luxury and you don't want to spend over $55,000, I mean, a base GV70 is going to surprise you. It really is. Now, when you place the GV70 in reverse, you are going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory. Resolution quality is very smooth and clear. And you will have other camera angles as well. So you have your bumper cams, that way you're not backing into the car behind you. And then you also have more of a 180-degree view as well. Really cool stuff. No top view, that'll be reserved for higher trims. Now, as we continue on beneath the head unit, here we go again with some touch-sensitive icons, but some dual functionality. So you will have your map, navigation, radio, media, so quick access icons. Then you have seek and track, physical dials for the volume and tuning. So we see this setup in other Genesis products and obviously Hyundai and Kia as well. But the real difference here though is that unlike with Kia at least, you're going to have your climate control settings right here. And yes, they are touch sensitive, but it's cleanly laid out. It's much cleaner than Kia. So from here, you'll be able to adjust your AC, front and rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction, and then your 2-level heated seats. And then you will have physical dials to adjust your dual zone climate control. Really like that. Then for the center console itself, before we dive into the button layouts, it might be showing up on camera, and it might just be where I'm parked right now, but you will get blinded by the sun glare. The materials that Genesis used is not a good mixture because you're going to have gloss black trim, which is difficult to keep clean. But then you have this silver accent here and it just blinds you. It just shows right up in your face. So be prepared to have some sun glare entering this car. So you might want to be wearing sunglasses all the time. So that is one drawback here with this GV70. Now you will have a drive mode selector. So you will have Eco, Comfort, Sport, and My Drive mode. So you'll be able to customize this to your liking, but then you also are going to have a terrain mode for snow, mud, and sand. So if you are going off-road, if you want to experience the outdoors, you can do that here with a GV70. You're going to have your auto start-stop button, your park assist features, your camera settings. Then for the center console itself with your dial, great thing here is that you have that dial that controls your infotainment system. So I love to see that. So glad that Genesis is keeping this layout here. Kind of reminds me of what you have with BMW. You can have a back button, home, and menu. So again, there is some redundancy here with the buttons. You're going to have your auto vehicle hold, then your drive mode selector, which is still on a dial. Next, that will be 2 cup holders. And then to round out the front seating area for the center storage compartment, pretty deep here. Enough room for some smartphones, wallets, other tech gadgets. You'll have 2 USB-C inputs, a 12-volt outlet, and there's also a nice cubby for a smartphone. Now for passengers in the second row, you're looking at right on 37 inches of legroom, which is pretty much on par with the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, Mercedes-Benz GLC, and BMW X3. It's also this right here as to why, even for a base model at around $50,000, this is a better deal over the G70. Most likely you're not cross-shopping either one because you have more practicality here. It's a crossover designed for a family. When you take a look at the interior dimensions, you kind of understand as to why the G70 might be on the chopping block because it doesn't make sense, especially with it being a bit more outdated with its interior layout. But when you take a look at what you have here in regards to interior space, even though we have that sportier roofline, there's plenty of headroom here, so tall passengers will not be hitting their head on the headline. There's also a good amount of legroom as well, and I do think you can try squeezing in a third person in the center. This is great stuff here. This is great to see. Now, just like we saw up front, these seats are very supportive, and the bolstering is pretty good as well. Again, something that would be found in, say, a BMW X3, potentially an M Sport model, and Porsche Macan. So I do like the direction that Genesis is moving in here. I think it's the right decision as well with this market being so overly saturated. You got to be unique. When it comes to the amenities, you do have 2 center-mounted air vents to go along with 2 USB-C inputs. And then to round out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Returning to the rear fascia to take a look at the cargo area for the 2026 Genesis GV70, you're not going to have a latch here like most crossovers in this class. Instead, there will be a button on your rear windshield wiper. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right on 29 cubic feet of room, which is really impressive. Very impressive for a vehicle that looks sporty and smaller than most rivals. To put that into perspective, that's better than the Mercedes-Benz GLC, better than the Alfa Romeo Stelvio and Lexus NX, and is right on line with the BMW X3. So really cool stuff to see here. So it's flexible, it's practical if you're going on some longer road trips. The GV70 is going to be a great companion for that. I will be able to fit all my camera gear today with no issues. That's 3 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod. And this cargo area is very deep, so you can store more items as well. So really like to see that. Now, on both sides of the cargo area, you will notice some quick release latches that will conveniently lower the second row seats. And when they're lowered, you're looking at right on 57 cubic feet. That's where with the GV70, its size certainly comes into play, because an X3 would be better in that way with the boxier shape, higher roof line. So keep all of that in mind. But if you're using this as a family vehicle, as a grocery getter, it is more than practical in its class. So that is one thing to be really excited about for this vehicle, alongside its great looks and interior design. Now also you will have some cubbies on both sides of the cargo area, so that way you can store some smaller items as well. And then beneath the floor mat there will be a spare tire, so if you encounter a flat on those road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. For some reason, I was expecting something completely different out of the GV70. 4 years ago, I featured this model with the V6, and I was like, this is a really fun crossover, something that could give the Audi SQ5 a run for its money. Also, when you take a look at the GV70 with the V6, it maxes out just over $70,000, which, you know, is kind of hefty for a niche brand like this. With the 2.5, I feel this might be more than adequate, more than enough for any buyer in this class. Now, the question comes down to trim levels, right? Like, you know, a Prestige would be really nice with leather seats and more amenities. But for a base GV70, I've kind of been left speechless. Now, let's begin, since we're on the highway, going at highway speeds, let's begin with interior insulation, because with 19-inch wheels, you would expect that ride quality wouldn't be that great, that you would hear the outside world. And that is not the case here. I was really expecting interior insulation to be a bit more trimmed down with this being a base model, and to my surprise, this is very much like a luxury crossover at $50,000. It has a quiet demeanor. You barely hear this engine. It's smooth, it's relaxing, it's calm. Now, for some manufacturers, like Volvo for instance with the XC60, it can be too luxurious, too relaxing, to a point where it's sedated and numb. With the GV70, I don't want to say this, but it's almost like a more affordable Porsche Macan. You see that with its design, but you also feel it with the driving experience and driving dynamics. Now, I am in sport mode, so that could be playing around with things here. But I love the firmness of the steering wheel. I love the firmness of the handling. And that is something that a lot of manufacturers fail at. They don't give you an authentic sports crossover experience. And I'm getting that here with the GV70. Now, since we are kind of traveling in a straight line here, let's talk about overall vision and seat positioning being behind the wheel of this model. So nice panoramic view. A-pillars really aren't that aggressive, so I don't think you'll have any blind spots when you are approaching intersections or red lights. Taking a look at your side mirrors, they're actually decently sized. I mean, I can see what's in my blind spots and the lane next to me. They're also somewhat aerodynamic. And then taking a look out back, nice clear view there, even with the headrests in the way. Probably more importantly is going to be that seat positioning, because from the outside, we already talked about the ground clearance coming in at 7.3 inches. The GV70 does have a car-like design. It kind of looks like the G70 shooting brake. And with that, though, you don't have a car-like driving experience, where you do sit pretty high up in this model. Nice commanding feel and presence over the roadways. Now, I will say, though, that the hood does stick out a bit here, so that might create some issues when you are at your child's pickup and drop-off lines. But aside from that, safety is most certainly a top priority here with the GV70. As we enter these back roads, I am curious to see what the handling is like here out of this vehicle. It's not necessarily going to have a sports tuned suspension. However, Genesis did focus on retuning this suspension to give you more confidence when you are in the corners and when you are on those back roads. And that to me is something I can really appreciate here, because Some people could argue that this generation is getting up there in age, that it's kind of long in the tooth because it has been around for about 5 years without a major update. Sure, for 2026, new technology, a slightly different design, but this is hardly a mid-cycle refresh, or hardly something that would be captivating in that way. Something that you would look at the spec sheet and say, wow, this is completely different than what I had last year. Really not. The technology is what's mostly going to be the talking point out of this vehicle. However, when it comes to the performance, though, out of this 2.5, this is where I think Genesis is most certainly competitive and also in line with a lot of its closest rivals. With the 2.5, 300 horsepower, 311 pound-feet of torque, this 8-speed automatic is one of the best in this class, up there with BMW, and also the 7-speed dual clutch with the Q5. This is actually going to be somewhat of an agile and athletic experience, which you wouldn't necessarily expect per se out of Genesis, because Genesis is a luxury brand after all, but also Lexus, Volvo, they all lean heavily towards luxury, although you have Alfa Romeo, which kind of bucks that trend there. But the reason why I say this is kind of like a Porsche Macan is because you have the luxury, you have the quality, you have the refinement, but you also have that performance, you have that fun factor, which some vehicles are lacking in that department. Now for me, with the steering input, it's exactly what I want to see out of a non-German brand. It's weighted, it gives you some sense of feedback, some sense of connectivity to the roadways, and for a vehicle that's going to be going head-to-head with some formidable foes, I think this is most certainly up there. This is most certainly competitive. As I look at what this crossover is offering me, it's more of a jack-of-all-trades and a well-rounded experience, rather than having one specific trait that's very strong, like an Alfa Romeo Stelvio with the performance. In a way, this is a bit more of a stronger offering than a Lexus NX, more of a stronger offering than the Volvo XC60, and it's more well-rounded than the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. Now, the question is, do I put this in the same category as German rivals? With the GLC, maybe. With the Audi Q5, I think the Q5, like I said before, step backwards. This is not going to be as performance-tuned as a BMW X3, even one without the M Sport package. So this is one of those crossovers that is a fighter, it's a contender, but it's not a class leader. And is that okay? I think it is. I think it is. I think what it's offering here, technologically, comfort-wise, especially on the lower end for a base model, I don't think you look at this vehicle and say, it's missing something, it's lacking something. I think you can actually purchase a base GV70 and be very happy with it if you don't want to have a power moonroof, if you don't want to have ventilated seats or leather upholstery. It kind of just comes down to the smaller details, right? Comes down to maybe the overall straight line speed, or maybe it comes down to the amenities. That's where you might be fighting back and forth with yourself as to what you want to do. On throttle, it is quick, it is smooth. Very much like every other aspect about this crossover. It's simple in its way, but it's also a crossover that you kind of just glide right along. And that's what I really like here. That it's tuned to be luxurious while also not being boring. This is not a boring crossover to drive. So all in all, after this review, after this test drive, and I've probably said this 100 times already, you're probably sick of it, I am really impressed. I am really surprised here. I think the mid-cycle refresh, the minor update here to the GV70 is exactly what this vehicle needed. Now, I would like to experience a Prestige without the 3.5 and see what this vehicle is offering on the higher end. Because I think that under $60,000, you're getting a crossover that can kind of do it all. And for enthusiasts, obviously they'll look at BMW, they'll look at Porsche. But for a niche brand, for a brand that would be in the same category as Volvo, as Lexus, as Alfa Romeo, I think this is one of the stronger offerings. And what they have done here for 2026 is even better. And as someone who is guilty of overlooking the Genesis lineup over the past 3 years, This is one crossover you do not want to overlook. This is one crossover you do not want to dismiss and not test drive. I would recommend checking one out. I really would. As much as I'm a BMW X3 fanboy in this class, the GV70 has really surprised me today with what it's offering, especially for a base trim. And that's why at around $50,000, this most certainly might be worth considering. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2026 Genesis GV70. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys next time.